Hey y'all, we are back with another Mighty Multimedia Reviews. This time we are doing a double feature. I think, so I want to get out more of these short form, not super long videos. But to be honest, I have a lot of backlog from the holidays and everything. But there's also just some things I want to get out there and more. There's a lot of things I want to get out there. So I think I'm going to try this kind of pairing up a few different ones. We'll see if that works okay or not. We'll just kind of have to see. But from the title, you'll see the first one that we are reviewing is Saltburn on Amazon Prime. It's something that is definitely in the headlines. A lot of people are talking about. We'll kind of get into, I guess, if that is for a good reason or not. But it's something that I saw and that we definitely need to talk about, right? So I'm just going to, definitely 100% spoilers here. So because it's a twist, it's kind of a mystery movie. So, don't be watching this if you haven't seen it. So, but I'm going to start with the general plot, right? So the general plot is that, some kind of loser kid from Oxford befriends this rich party boy who is from generational wealth, and they end up spending, or the loser kid ends up spending the summer at the rich party boy's mansion with his like super weird rich family, right? But then the twist is, I'm just going to get into the twist because we're going to talk about it more. But the twist is that the loser kid ends up being actually like a crazy, really intelligent, maniacal wacko, sociopath, serial killer, whatever bad adjectives you want to throw on there. And it turned out that he engineered everything, that he lied a bunch of times, and he engineered befriending this kid, getting into his summer, and then slowly embedding himself in this family and killing them off and stealing their wealth, which is like wow, right? That is pretty crazy. I will say, we're going to get into it a little bit more. I want to first talk about just the actors of this movie. A lot of younger people, but specifically, I just wanted to kind of shout out these. So Jacob Elordi is the rich party boy. So he was in this, obviously, really kind of, dumb, head in the clouds, kind of whatever kind of person. And then he was in Euphoria, who was like a really crazy bad guy. I didn't see a lot of it, but I saw some of it, and I've seen a lot of the media and the coverage of it. And then he was Elvis in Priscilla. That's a lot of range, so kudos to him. And then Archie Medicui, I don't know if I said that right, to be honest. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. But in this, he is the kind of like a adopted son of the rich party boy's family. He is in some way related. But so he's in this, and again, he's kind of like a devious kind of person or whatever. And then he's in Gran Turismo, which I'm going to review probably next week. So again, that's a lot of range. Pretty impressive. Very diametric characters. Really cool. And then lastly is Barry Keoghan. He is the loser kid in this who turns out to be evil, turns out to be the whole bad guy, right? He is also going to be, was, I guess, a little bit, you really only saw his voice and maybe you saw a little bit of shadows depending on the deleted scenes and whatever you saw, but is going to be the Joker in Matt Reeves' Batman. And I think he'll do okay based on his performance in this one. I think he's definitely got the look. He can make a lot of different facial expressions, but he can do like the maniacal evil one. We definitely saw his chops here. And he can play the, innocent but really intelligent, manipulative person and do these really intense, close scenes where you're not quite sure what's happening, but then he like takes a dark twist. He's got the chops, so it'll be interesting to see what he's doing there. I'm more excited about that now. So just for me, I guess I'll start kind of getting into some of my opinions or whatever. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan. It's just a real off-kilter movie. And I think it's just too off-kilter for me. And I think and two things that is just too much, at least, again, for me personally. Everyone in this movie is awful, just terrible. They're either evil or just kind of deceptive or dumb and rich and blind or whatever. Just whatever it is, just terrible people. And there's a lot of shows like that where there's some awful people, but there's usually this one person that you can kind of root for, that's in your corner, that's maybe not the hero, but a character who is just usually inherently good, or that you can at least kind of project onto and follow. And there just wasn't in this. It was definitely a choice. It was absolutely purposeful. The whole off-kilter vibe was purposeful. But again, for me, you just need that. Talk about like Game of Thrones, right? I mean, in Game of Thrones, you really developed a lot of characters. So some characters that were awful at the beginning turned into people that weren't terrible, and then other people that were good ended up falling or doing crazy things, or dying and stuff, right? But at least in that one, you had Jon Snow, right? He was your anchor character. In that, you were always able to root for him. He was doing the right thing, even when he messed up. He was trying to do good, and you were able to follow him. It really grounded the show with all of this terrible, bad stuff going on. He was the one light, something you could focus on, and it would keep you invested because you gotta have someone to root for. I mean, I guess that one is a little bit more just the form of the show is pitting people against each other. It's a lot of competition. But even in everything, you just need someone that you want to make it through, someone that you want to win. And in this, it just didn't happen, right? Because even when the poor kid was, before you knew that he was evil and everything, he was just weird and odd and just gross. So everything, all of that. The other thing, number two, is that everything everyone said was either so stupid or just terrible. Again, entirely purposeful, but I just wanted some more meat to the dialogue. It was just so airy or just deceptive and rude and off-kilter. I don't know. I think I'm just not a super off-kilter type of movie watcher, but those two things kind of did bother me. I will say that the twist in this movie, we already talked about, is pretty good. I do appreciate it in light of everything else. At the beginning, I thought that it was going to be the family that is all weird or whatever. And I think the trailers and even the beginning of the movie played with that expectation. That's what you were supposed to think. But then you just realize how they were all just like incompetent and dumb. And even though they did do a lot of bad things and everything, it usually wasn't like devious or whatever. They were just all wrapped up in their world. You get to that one scene where it turns out that the poor kid's family, his mother and father, are both alive and incredibly normal. It's just because he lies to the party boy, and he's saying that he said that his father died, and then his mother was like a crazy drug addict or whatever. She's in an insane asylum, and that's how he sort of guilt trips the party boy into taking him for the summer to his mansion with his family. I mean, that was pretty crazy. You were like, whoa, what the hell is going on? Even though he was pretty weird to begin that once, you were like, this kid's a freaking liar. I don't know what the hell is going on. But then as soon as the party kid died, you knew what was going on, right? You knew that that Barry Keoghan was the bad guy. And then, slowly happened, he kicked the black kid who was kind of adopted family, whatever, out. Then I guess he killed the sister who faked the suicide, and then he just waited until the dad died, and then when the mother got really sick, who invited him back because he left, then he pulled her plug, and then he finally had the house to himself. It was pretty close to the end once you realized who the bad guy was, and then his whole plot played out. I don't know. I mean, it was a good twist, and it was a good execution. So I do appreciate that. I guess I understand why a lot of people like it. I was thinking the whole time, right, because you really get into it. It's that old time. I don't know if anyone has been to the Newport Mansions. I'm sure there's other ones as well. But this house was very akin to the Newport Mansions, right? And specifically how there's like a room, and then it's connected to your dressing closet, and then there's a bathroom that's shared with the other room, but also has a dressing closet. I went to the Newport Mansions relatively recently. It has the same layout. and it's just how people live. That's how a lot of big older mansions work like that. I mean, just imagine living that life of luxury with just how much these people do not have to worry about absolutely anything. And to be honest, this movie, it plays with it, and I think it makes fun of it at some point, but it also tries to show, I think, the pain and the hardship of having so much money. I mean, first of all, come on, it's got to be okay. It doesn't have to be too bad. Money doesn't solve every problem, but it does certainly solve a lot of problems. But I mean, the money corrupts these people, I guess, a lot, right? And it's like, it's a lonely life because you don't have friends, but it's like you like destroyed your friends for the most part, and you cast them out. Some of it is your friends also get corrupted by it, so who can you trust? But then, I mean, in this, Barry Keoghan took advantage of them, so you really couldn't trust him. They thought they could trust him, but then he ended up killing them or taking advantage of them and taking all the money. So there is some of that. Movies play with that kind of, super rich people a lot, I would guess. I know, I've seen, you think about like Crazy Rich Asians, and there's a bunch of other movies that just people are fascinated by the uber wealthy, what they do, how they live their life. And sometimes it is how terrible it is. Sometimes it's just how easy it is. This was a little bit mixture of both. I think it was trying to say something. I don't know if it quite got the message across. And I think that's a big part of it, to be honest. I thought this movie was relatively surface level. It was trying to say criticism and be thoughtful, but a lot of it, I think it just kind of ended up falling flat and just being a lot of good things to look at. Maybe that was sacrificed for the twist because you needed to morph a lot of the movie for the twist to work. And the twist was a gigantic part of the movie. So maybe you can't say what you want to say and have the twist really effectively. I don't know. I mean, an amazing director and an amazing screenwriter and everything could probably put those two things in the movies. And I'm not saying that these guys did a terrible job, but I think maybe each were sacrificed a little bit for the sake of the other. So maybe you needed to pick one. Maybe you just needed a little bit of better execution to get them both up there. But in some ways, it felt flat and it felt a little surface level to me. In the end, overall, this movie was just a freak show. it was just a freak show. Crazy stuff going on. So, okay, I guess we'll talk about this, right? Because the big talking point of the movie was after the party boy dies, the loser kid goes to his grave and undresses himself and has sex with the newly covered dirt of the grave of his kid. And the scene is way too long. But it just embodies what a freak show this movie is, I think. For the most part. So, not for me, for the most part. A lot of people are talking about it. I think maybe I'm just not that sort of dark, mystique, freaky kind of movie goer as I talked about earlier. But some of it was certainly interesting. It's always at least worth the ride, usually, to get into the life of these uber rich people. But again, some of it fell flat to me. People are really excited about it right now. I think we'll see in a few years if it really holds up. I tried to dress a little bit the part for this. I thought, Saltburn was very preppy and had all these rich people vibes or whatever, so put on a little bit of like a preppy outfit or whatever. But this next movie, the second part of our double feature, is definitely not that. Very, very akin. I was looking at some stuff and trying to match it a little bit, but it wasn't really working, and I think it's okay. So our second review is Gran Turismo, that was on Netflix. And apart from Saltburn, which I had definitely mixed feelings about, I wholly enjoyed this movie, right? It really has it all. So I wrote these down. I wasn't going to memorize them because I just didn't want to forget every single thing, right? So I'm just kind of going to go through this list. This movie has it all, right? So it has an underdog story. That is awesome. Always love rooting for the underdog. It's got a great love interest. It's got an awesome coach-student relationship. It's got some really, fantastic rivals. Always an awesome part of any good movie. It's got a lovable main character, and I think that it's just got the perfect amount of risk. So this movie just has it all. Okay, starting off with the cast of this movie, I think the cast is just fantastic, just absolutely perfect. So the main character is Archie Matawiecki. Again, I don't know if I said that name right, so I apologize if I butchered that. But he was from Saltburn, played a very different character. In this, he is just this lovable teenager who loves racing on his GT game, and he gets the chance to go do it in real life. He's just super lovable. He is he's pretty humble, but he also knows he's got skills. Fantastic casting. This kid absolutely murders it and had a really good year, basically from these two movies, right? And then you had David Harbour as the old rough coach who he was a racer, but now he kind of like lost faith in everything. I mean, that is just David Harbour to a T, and he murders this role again as he has in other ones. And then Orlando Bloom as kind of this like profit-driven, marketing mogul, whatever you want to call it. He puts the whole thing in motion. He recruits David Harbour, and then eventually they sign Archie to this whole thing, and he just kills it as well. He's got the kind of like slick, he's able to convince anyone of anything. I think Orlando Bloom can kind of do that in real life. So again, the casting was on point. So I mean, going into this movie, I mean, I vaguely knew what GT racing was, right? I'm sure that I've played something of it at some point. But I didn't know that this movie was based off of this, right? I went in blind. I knew it was a racing movie, obviously. I don't really know if I saw a trailer. I probably saw a little bit, vaguely aware. But going in, I talked about it a little bit, obviously, when I went through the cast. But the plot just being that this kid who's really good at this racing game, GT, which was designed to be almost like a perfect copy of actual racing. And then this big company, Nissan, goes in and they do this marketing stunt to train them and then get them into an actual race to see if those skills can really translate and they can actually be a real racer, like a superstar. I had no idea. That's a fantastic plot. I mean, like, just wow, that's awesome. It's true. I had no idea. I had no idea this was a thing at all. I had no idea this movie was about this. But I was immediately sucked in. I really, really enjoyed this movie. I can't say enough good things about it, which is interesting, right? Because I am not a huge fan of racing in general. I just don't get it. I don't know if I want to go so far as it's just when you're doing NASCAR, people always say the line like, oh, they make another left turn. Oh, what are they going to do? Oh, they make another left turn. So it's so boring. I mean, this is different than NASCAR, right? They're doing these crazy tracks. But just in general, I don't get it. It doesn't feel entirely like a sport to me. It's a lot more about like the car you're driving or whatever. At least I thought that, at least in some facet. And it just feels less of a sport. It's just more mechanical and like a new age thing that's just not my cup of tea. But this made me enjoy it at the very least. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go get into the racing world and start watching whatever and start following it. But I definitely at least appreciate it. Just the sheer will and the strength and everything and the quick reflexes that it takes to drive and to drive in these crazy conditions and these crazy high speeds like this. It makes you appreciate it. There's been some racing movies before that have been pretty solid, but I think this one does a particularly good job. I'm going to go through a little bit of the plot here, right? Because it's a really good plot. Give some thoughts here or whatever, but this might be a little bit superficial. So, and it is going down. He's doing pretty well. He qualifies. He's racing and stuff. But then there's a freak accident. And he brutally crashes, kills a spectator. By the way, okay, I'm pause there. Actually, we just started, but pause. I mean, that's crazy. It's totally the spectator's fault, right? I mean, he was sitting there, and there's I mean, I guess racing fans do that, right? There's just like a guardrail, and then there's like a flimsy fence, and the guy's just sitting there right next to it on a folding chair or whatever. And these giant hunks of metal at incredible speeds are zooming past, and you're just sitting there like, this is totally fine. It's definitely a freak accident. There's very low risk of being hit or anything happening, but I mean, you 100% as a spectator took that risk. I wouldn't sit there. That is way too close. That was ridiculous. But I guess they just love it. They just love it so much. But getting back to the plot, it really messes with the kid's head. David Harbour comes in and talks about how he kind of did the same thing. He had a bad crash when he was racing, but then he never got back into racing, and he regretted it. So it gets the kid back moving again, and then they make some like really good moves. I guess it happened in real life, but it just translated extremely well cinematically. The three of them get together that I talked about earlier, Archie, David Harbour, and Orlando Bloom, and they decide that, because there's like this smear campaign against Archie because he killed this kid, and they're saying, you know, he's just a video gamer, he doesn't know how to do this, is extremely dangerous, he should get the hell out of here, and they're thinking about suspending him, the league, or whatever, all this. And then they decide to like double down and go all in. They're like, we could back out, that's the safe thing, but amongst all this crazy bad publicity and you kind of freaking out and being all this, we're just going in. And they're doing it in this like cool little underground pub, and they're talking back and forth, and they have to convince each other, and they're just like, let's do it. Very cinematic. Again, that's kind of the part of the risk going on here, and that just plays incredibly well. Then from the academy at the beginning, because I guess I didn't really talk about this, but if you saw the movie, you know what was happening. There was a group of, like, it wasn't just Archie that they recruited for this. They recruited, I don't know, 20 or something people who were all in, did GT racing. They were good, and then they put them through this academy, and David Harbour coached them and tried to coach them, and they eliminated them slowly, and then Archie was the one who finished in the end, so he was the one they picked to try this out. But then for this, they were going to do this crazy race, which is like 24, 48 hours, something like that. And you switch back and forth with drivers, so you need a few drivers. And they bring back the guy who Archie just barely beat, and then this other dude who was there as well. They just coming off the plane, and they're just like, what's up? How we doing? Elite move. Bringing back your past competitors now, because he's got a different rival. He's got this jerk who is like, there's so much money behind him or whatever, and they just want to kick his ass. Rightfully so. He's a good bad guy. He's the good rival there. And then just, yeah, bringing those guys back is fantastic. They like each other again. Now they have someone else to root for. I love that. Again, super cinematic. And through all this whole thing, you got to talk about the love story as well, I suppose. It's just like this girl that he met at the very beginning before all this craziness happened, but then David Harbour kind of nudges him, and they get into some of the, he like texts her, and he takes her to Japan, and they're hanging out, and they're really like each other, and they're going to a club, and they're young, and all of this. It's just good. It doesn't interfere with the plot too much, but it plays into it well. And then other relationship is Archie's father, who thought his gaming career, like a lot of fathers, or at least movie and TV show fathers, thought that he was wasting his time, and this was ridiculous. But obviously it turned out into being something pretty special. He's in a lot of different movies. You can look him up. I respect him a lot. I think he's a really good actor. The one thing, in Guardians of the Galaxy, he's the guy with like the metal things on his head or whatever. He's in a few of them. But he's in a ton of stuff, and he's really good. There's this really heartwarming moment right before the final race where he comes up. He's just like, "I'm so proud of you. I support you all the way. I'm kind of sorry about being a jerk earlier, and you're my son, and I'm so proud of you. And you can totally do this." And just fantastic. I mean, those were really good acting performances. You needed to have that in the movie because they set that all up at the beginning with his dad, who told him to get a real job and everything. So you knew it was going to come, but the execution was really good. It brought it down to such a human level, and that little moment was beautiful. And then we get into this final race. This is a crazy race where you have to go back and forth, and you're driving for hours, and you drive overnight and all this. Pretty whack. You got to have Archie. He's got to overcome the trauma of him crashing earlier, so he's really got to focus up. And then, so we haven't talked about this part too much, but it's like, because of the game, he is really able to see it differently. It works with, he can see like the statistics and how everything works because it's like fine tuned. And it really comes into play at this end. They do this cool thing where they go back and forth from when he's playing the game, everything morphs around him into a car. So even though he's playing the game, it looks like he's doing the car. And then when he's in the car later, it morphs so that he's just back home, driving on his simulator. And that is, a lot of that is really fantastic, I would say. I mean, there's not a whole lot of visual CGI stuff that they have to do in this movie, but that piece, what they decide to do it with, I just, is such a great choice. It really plays up the video game part of it and his mind working in a different way part of it. And the way they beat it is that he like sees the track, and he sees like a better way of doing it, and he's just talking to David Harbour. He's like, "We're down. I got to do something crazy. What can I do? I'm gonna try to take a different path than other people do." And he says, "Screw it. We got to do this," because they're trying to get on the podium, trying to get third, so they can prove that they're good or whatever. And that this whole GT bring a simulation person into actual racing works. So he does it, and you see the tracks, and he's like going in or whatever. And they do this in a bunch of racing too. How a bunch of different races, how they go into the car and they show the mechanics, and the different. I'm not an engineering guy, and I'm not a car guy at all. And I'm sure this has happened in other movies. But they really, show the pistons pumping and stuff. I presume that's the right word, and the engine working and the wheels and everything. It really makes you feel this piece of machinery, how complicated it is, how complex it is, how fast it is. Really, really great. I love, again, more showing cinematic, using your limited CGI and special effects where you can to amazing effect. And then in the end, they win. They don't win the whole thing, but they get third, which is winning. After all this, it's really impressive to get third. The rival freaks out and runs away. Fantastic. Screw that friggin' dude. The celebration is fantastic. Everyone's just, oh my God, everyone's so hyped. You can just feel the excitement in it. All the choices were so well executed in this movie. Right, so it's a true story, so they take the true stories. That itself is really good, but then making the cinematic, making these different little pieces really cinematic, not using a lot of CGI and special effects and things like that, but using them to really good effect when they're used, when they're necessary. Just so many things work together. Everything, all these little pieces come together so well. I've talked in the past how a lot of different movies just can't bring all the pieces together. It's just, there's a bunch of different scenes and ideas and good looking things, and they just can't fit them together. But this movie fits them together so extremely well. Oh, and then wrapping this up at the end, like any good movie based off of a true story, they show clips and pictures from the real guy who did all this, right? And to be honest, sometimes that helps because I just don't know a lot about this. So it's not that I didn't believe it, but seeing those actual things made me grasp and understand how real this was. The real guy also served as the stunt double in the movie. That's just perfect. Just perfect. I just don't have enough good things to say about this movie. I did not expect to like it this much, but I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, it's not that long. It's not much of a commitment. It's just this one movie. A lot of great actors, great action. Even if you don't like racing, this will make you like racing in the highest regard. That is the end of our double feature. I hope you enjoyed this. This format specifically, let me know if you have any ideas, but I think it'll be relatively small, 20 to 25 minutes. That's kind of like what I'm looking for, 10 to 15 minute reviews. But I just can't, I can't just focus on putting these out all the time, so these double features might save a little time, but make sure that it still gets out and in pretty bite-sized pieces. So again, let me know. I hope you enjoyed some of this. That's all from me. Signing off.